All right, hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to our second episode of the CounterAction Show. Just a reminder, our goal is to provide a platform for veterans, service members, and their families to share their experiences with the military for the purposes of bringing awareness to veteran issues and challenging veteran stereotypes. So make sure you guys subscribe to our channel, follow, download, because we're on YouTube, Spotify, and all kinds of other podcasts. So make sure you guys do the subscribing equivalent on what those are for podcasts. What is it? What's the equivalent for those, Jonathan, on podcasts? I'm not familiar with those.
Well, I know on Spotify you have follow, and you can get notified of new episodes and stuff, kind of like subscribing on YouTube. I'm not sure about the other platforms. I don't really like follow podcasts on them as much.
Gotcha. All right. So whatever, follow us, I guess, and make sure you like it. I know on YouTube you hit the like button. Podcast, I'm sure there's some kind of equivalent, as well as comment stuff down below. If you guys got topics you want us to talk about, experiences you want to share, or just need someone to talk to, we'll have a link for our Discord down below. Right now it's veterans only, so only people that are in there are folks that are either currently in or were a service member, and so that's a good place to have a community. You can also email us at counteraction22@gmail.com, and there'll be a link for that in the description, or I guess not a link, but the email address is in the description box. So before we start this episode, this one's going to be a little bit of a heavier one. Jonathan and I were talking. We decided if we were going to encourage you guys to seek for help, talk about what's been bugging you, mental health-wise, physicalness-wise, or anything else, we probably got to share the stuff we've been dealing with, and not that it's necessarily on the most extreme spectrum of things, but there might be topics covered that if you are an individual that tends to perhaps become more despondent or more prone to self-harm because of hearing other people talk about their things, what I would encourage you to, or rather what we would encourage you to do, is to go ahead and just kind of hop off. Just know we're going to be talking about a lot of mental health things, like sharing our own experiences. And just make sure you subscribe and check in for the next video. We're going to try to have a weekly upload around 5 p.m. Eastern on all the different platforms. So we just want to make sure you give everyone a warning. If you are okay with it, however, proceed. Because the rest of this episode, Jonathan and I were like, hey, we're going to probably need to share what we've been struggling with. We're going to talk about maybe a little bit about what we were like before joining the military. At least I want to share just real briefly anyways, as well as maybe some sources of issues that if we feel like they were associated to military stuff, but mostly what we're dealing with and what we did to get help. Do you feel like that's a good, accurate sum up, Jonathan?
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate.
All right. So let's go ahead. I guess I will kick this off some. Jonathan, feel free to tie in, or I'll just stop after a section and you do with your part. Does that sound like a plan?
Okay. Yeah, sounds good to me.
All right, cool. So in high school, I was a pretty cheery, really competitive dude. Did things like black belt and martial arts, Eagle Scout. I was like the bee's knees as far as goody two shoes went. Anyways. Oh, man, I had an interview recently, and the thing that stood out to the guy was I was an Eagle Scout. And I was like, really? Of all the stuff, the Eagle Scout. Anyways. So I was I competed. I was ended up getting paid some to do music. And that's actually what I did in the Marines. I was a bandsman, so I did boot camp and all that good stuff, MCT. But I competed a ton in high school. Got scholarships, won regional kinds of things, went around the state, did a summer touring the area, doing some jazz stuff, and it was a good time. Then I got the opportunity to join the Marines right around the time I got dumped / cheated on by my high school senior. I thought she was my girlfriend. I guess she didn't really think so. And her reasoning was because I wasn't masculine enough, and the recruiter called me right around then, and I was like, oh yeah, your new football player boyfriend going to do this? And so my parents actually didn't know that was mostly why I joined until a year ago. I've been out for 6. So that's kind of was me beforehand. I was a pretty cheery dude. Joined the Marines in boot camp. Things got downhill fast. I started off pretty strong. First couple of weeks, I had nicknames like All-American from the drill instructors, because almost anytime they're like, hey, who's done this? I was like, this recruit has. There wasn't a whole lot I hadn't actually already done to some degree, so they started calling me All-American. Then we did a rope exercise, and I fell off of it at the very top. My memory says it's about a 20-foot drop. That could be off. I'm not sure, but I separated my shoulder and did the rest of boot camp basically with one arm, as well as combat training. And so the result was my performance tanked, my ability to just be a team player tanked, And so, somewhat understandably, my whole platoon in boot camp, at least, turned on me. And if any of you guys have seen stuff like with Gomer Pyle, I think it's Full Metal Jackets, where he gets beat at night, that happened to me multiple times. So that's definitely where a lot of trust issues started happening, anxiety. I'm pretty sure that's where my night terrors and stuff comes from, because I was just being woken up, like pinned down, can't do anything, getting the shit kicked out of me. There'd be things like getting thrown in the shower. Drill instructors let us fight each other to resolve our differences without caring. The closest I got to being an aggressor was someone kept calling me a band fag, and I was over it. So I just like pinned him up by his throat against the wall in the bathroom, and I was like, call me that one more time, and I will choke your ass out just like I beat you in the pugil sticks. That's the closest I got to, but that was the environment, at least, that I had for boot camp. It's changed quite a bit since then. So if you're a parent that's watching this, or a loved one, and you're curious, it's supposedly not that way anymore. But also remember, recruiters get paid to get numbers. They don't get paid to tell you the truth. So that's supposedly how it's supposed to be, but who actually knows? So I think that boot camp started a lot, because like the brotherhood and stuff, they're supposed to be like, you guys got each other's backs. And I actually learned in boot camp, what I took away was no one gives a shit about me except for me, which is like the opposite of what you're supposed to get. And that kind of thing kind of perpetuated quite a bit throughout my time in the Corps. I had struggled quite a bit with depression. It got bad enough at one point my mom just flew out, because I was talking to my folks pretty much every day, at least for a little bit. I think it was like about the first 6 months I was at my fleet unit. I was talking to them pretty much every day. And there was some time in that like 3-4 year window where my mom was like, he sounds like he's about to like off himself. And so like she flew out to San Diego, which was super sweet of her. Like it was like a last minute flight. I'm sure that was not cheap. And I still appreciate that. So if my parents happen to watch this, just know I remember that, and I appreciate it. And you probably had an impact more than perhaps I'm willing to admit currently. I ended up hitting parts where I was in the unit where I actually kept stuff out of my room, because I hit NCO about 2 years in, just a little bit over 2 years. I hit E4, so I got my own room. That's how the MCRD San Diego was set up. And I hit a point where I saw no end in sight, and I was like starting to thinking about killing myself. And so I had to take everything, laundry detergent, anything I could think of that I could have used to harm myself, and kept it at work. So, because I've had this weird thing where I've struggled with like suicidal kinds of stuff, but for some reason, like I'm cognitive enough to like know what's happening, and either tell like my wife, like hide the guns, or like I still don't know where they are, because she's got them all hidden, because it's been like a couple months stint of this now. Then they did the same thing in San Diego. So like at work, I saw a chaplain, and then of course I got all kinds of shit from my unit. They're like, "How dare you miss out on like an hour rehearsal to go get yourself taken care of?" And so I never went back again. And luckily, the VA has track of that one or two visits. It might have been two, because when I had like a mental health evaluation, the guy was like, "Hey, I saw you saw somebody once while you were in. Tell me about that." And so thankfully I got a track at least with that. I'm surprised I kept hold of that. While I was in, I lost a dear friend of mine. Almost lost two friends in the same night. He was an MP. I was supposed to be with them, so I also struggled a little bit with blaming. I know it's not from combats or anything, so some of you guys, if you're combat vets, might be like, "What a bitch." But he was an MP. They went out to a party. I was supposed to go with them. I had just gotten my phone number changed, and so they thought they texted me like, "Hey, let's go." And I was the responsible one of the three of us. So they were coming back from this party. Neither one of them was drunk, thankfully. That would have been much harder for their parents. But there was this car, like with its lights turned off, basically in the middle of the road on like an exit ramp or something like that. And so this guy, who was his friend of mine, was driving this truck, clipped it, and was like, "Oh my God, I gotta go back and make sure they're okay." And then another truck came along, did the exact same thing as them, only the friend of mine pushed the other friend, who's my he was my best man, best pal since like 2011, out of the way, and the other guy got killed. And so I struggled with that for quite a while, as far as blaming myself, because I felt for quite a while like if I hadn't changed my phone number, if I had knocked on their door, I would have been with them. I've been like, "There's no way. You guys we're driving home at like 4 a.m. We're just gonna wait. Like, it's the weekend, it's fine. We're just gonna wait and drive back later." And so maybe he'd still be around. Worked a lot with their families, and turning in stuff to him, that kind of thing. And so I know that was like a guilt factor that every once in a while still kind of pops up. I know part of why I went back to try and be an officer was because I was like, I gotta make this guy proud, and I still have like I did a whole bunch of stuff for their family. Like I made like a memorial booklet kind of a thing where I got everyone to turn in pictures and his friends like write a letter to the family, and I got like the combat camera guys to make it all nice and fancy and laminated and stuff. So I have one of those, but that's not. It's not like a current huge source of pain, I guess, but I know that's a little bit of a tie, like something I can share that's perhaps gives some understanding between me and other folks who probably feel the same way, but maybe for different reasons. So you're already talking about anxiety. Anxiety started a lot too for me with the Marines. At least I feel like it came up a lot. Probably started with getting the crap beat out of me at night out of nowhere. But it definitely perpetuated through my time in. I had times where I'd have a conversation with a friend off duty. Granted, I was kind of a dick, so it's probably not a great conversation, but also I wouldn't say that it's warranted for a sergeant, your squad leader, to come into your change room out of nowhere and just start throwing furniture at you. So one of the ways that's perpetuated throughout, I guess, my current life is I have a really hard time with bosses. Not like I won't listen to them, but like the exact opposite. Like, I have to make sure they never want to talk to me because they want to talk to me. I'm like convinced. Oh my god, what did I do? Like that's the school I worked at, for example. The principal, the assistant principal, my supervisor was like, "Hey, I just need to talk to you real quick." Like via email, I saw a notification pop up on my smartwatch, and I could see just enough of it where it was like, "Hey, come see me." And I about damn near had a panic attack. I was like, it's kind of funny-ish, like right now, but man,
it's funny, but it's not funny. You know, it's funny, I think, because people can relate, but that sucks. You know, I totally get where you're coming from with that, and it's awful.
Yeah, you know, most of the time, bosses, you're not in trouble, and usually you know if you're in trouble, but because of I think how many times I just got in trouble while I was in for honestly having no clue what I did, that I'm just convinced now I'm always in trouble. It's just is someone going to tell me I'm in trouble. I think is what it is. Man, I should send this to my my therapist. So you're like, you want to know what's wrong with me? Here's this video. Anyway, so I think that's had a lot of anxiety. And let's see here. So at the end when I got out, am I going away? I'm assuming you guys do those, right, Jonathan? Like when you your last day.
It depends on like the command you're in, but I mean, yeah, everybody kind of does something.
All right, so my going away, I had 3 people say, "Oh my God, we're amazed you didn't kill yourself." And then in front of command leaders, and we just recently had a command changeover, and one of them was actually, I forget his actual billet. I think he was the school gunnery sergeant or something, but I forget his exact billet. But he was like he just got to where I was at like a week or two before I left, and he was like in charge of me while I was at MOS school. And so he's like, "Hey, I want you to see me before you actually leave." I was like, "Oh, great. What do I do now?" Because while I was in, this is some other stuff too. People would pull pranks. I got falsely accused of sexual harassment / rape 4 times. One of them was made up by a guy I was in with. I honestly don't think he knows how much it messed with me. But what he did was he decided it'd be really funny to say I was dating his girlfriend's twin sister. And he would like Photoshop me into pictures of her and like share those around. So at first I was like, whatever. Like people think I'm getting some. Like who really cares? Then he turned it into she killed herself because I raped her.
Oh shit.
And so that led to a couple-month investigation. He got someone to pretend to be or like a retired sergeant major or something and come by the unit and talk with my command demanding justice. And that obviously did not help my standing with the unit at all. Because they already weren't huge fans of me. Because again, I was kind of a jerk. You know, 18, 19-year-olds, 20-year-olds aren't the nicest or most humble of individuals. So like one of the first things I said when I got there was, "I want your job and I'm going to take it," which was obviously a horrible thing to say, but I did it. So you know, it is what it is. But like that was like a prank, and so like I had. Then there's another time, a couple months before I EAS'd, all my friends had already gotten out. Like I was pretty much just by myself, just like waiting out the clock for about a year, and the company or the unit Gunny one of them. He pulls me into his office with my fire team leader, who was a sergeant because I was a corporal, and he drops the court martial book on the desk and goes, "Do you know why you're here?" And I was like, "Oh my God, no, I have no clue. Like, this is not like a normal thing." And he's like, "You've been accused of raping somebody last night." I was like, "What?" Yeah, so it turned out, thankfully, the victim remembered the room that this person lived in. It was on the opposite side of the barracks, so this one got resolved rather quickly. But the guy stole my name. He's because how at least the Marine barracks, you put your name on placards out front of your door, so when your room gets inspected, they know who it is, and they'll have like unit, rank, all that stuff. And so the guy just gave me a promotion. So I was also being accused of impersonating a sergeant and a drill instructor. He said he was drill instructor, sergeant, my last name. And so like I had to talk with like CID, and thankfully the victim remembered what room he was in, and they're like, "There's no way it was this guy." Isn't the opposite? So the guy impersonated me to try and like get. I don't know if it was like intentional, like I want to get this guy in trouble, or if it was just like I happened to pick this guy's name when I was planning to do this. Like I'm not sure. So that's where more of like I think the work stuff probably comes from too. As well as my social anxiety. I hate hanging out with people for the most. Well, I don't know if hate's the best word. But it's very tiring hanging out with folks because I'm never sure who to trust. Some people have described me as like paranoid and pronoid, which is like you're scared of everyone, like you're worried they're gonna like do. It's like James Mattis, his like be polite and professional to everyone you meet, but be ready to kill them. It's like that exact like thing is like what I really like. I have a problem trusting folks probably too much off the bat, but I'm somehow also ready for them to screw me. I'm like it's a very it's a very bizarre existence. So like hanging out at clubs is not a thing I do. I'm not sure I really ever enjoyed that a ton, but I definitely didn't enjoy that once I went through the Marines. Um, like right now, like in real life, besides you, Jonathan, even though we've only met over video, I've got like one friend in person that wasn't from the Marines that we see for like every now and then, probably every couple of weeks. And I don't know if my wife is okay with it, if she hates it. Like she used to be more of a social butterfly, but I don't know if like we kind of like met in the middle. Like I used to love hanging out with people. Like I did youth groups and like sleepovers and all that crazy stuff. But then I was like, I don't. It's just exhausting. And I think it has a lot to do with just repeatedly getting stabbed in the back, and eventually you're just kind of like, what's the point, Like, and at least the Marines are very bizarre on how they'll handle stuff. Like when I first showed up, we had a gal who they knew was known for bending the truth. She was a little bit more on the loose side, which whatever. I don't care. Your body, do with however you do. But she got people kicked out of the Marines, claiming that they got her drunk and then slept with her, so they raped her, instead of admitting that she fraternized, because like all of her friends knew like she wanted it and it wasn't like involuntary and whatever, because like they're all hanging out. But as soon as she was going to get caught and screwed with fraternization and stuff, she changed it to they raped me, which is not obviously everyone's story. Like we're going to eventually try to have female military service members, and this is probably like one out of like a billion of someone who would make that up.
Yeah, absolutely.
The only reason I give this background story is because like the third day I got to my unit, she happened to be a roommate with my fire team leader. I was a Lance Corporal at the time. My fire team leader was like, "Hey, get your stuff out of your temporary room to your permanent room. Once you're done with that, I'm going to leave my door open. Just come by, knock on it, poke your head in, let me know you're done, and we'll go on with the rest of your check-in." And so I did that, and her roommate was this gal who I mentioned earlier, and she had on like, I don't know, like a towel around her head, like clearly just got out of the shower, like a tank top, sweatpants, that kind of thing. But by the time that my fire team leader and I got back to the shop, it turned into she was standing there naked, screaming at me to stop looking at her, and I didn't. So, but thankfully, because of her reputation, that one got kind of dismissed rather quickly, but that also doesn't really help your rep,
Yeah. I mean, once those kinds of stories or rumors are there, it doesn't matter if it gets disproven. People have already made up their minds about you. I've seen it in like on the boat and stuff, where the story came out and everybody started to hate somebody, and then 6 months later it turns out it was all bullshit, but it doesn't matter. In everybody's mind, that guy's a creep. It's too late.
And that could be a whole other episode. It could be like experiences with like maybe inequality or something. I don't know. I would probably, that'd be a whole other. So that's just kind of some background stuff, probably for some anxiety. My wife's convinced I have body dysmorphia. I don't actually know because I'm convinced I'm fat, and and so like to me, I'm like I'm fat, so like I clearly don't have body. But she's like, no, like you're not. So and this has been like an obsession of mine for a while. Which I know definitely started from the Marines because I don't know if you spent much time with the Marines, Nathan. I don't know. Sometimes Navy does. Sometimes individuals don't from the Navy. But they put a ton of emphasis on your fitness as well as appearance in uniform. And so one of the things that I had to go through was even though I was within weight, uniforms fit me fine. The unit decided, hey, you have to do 3 workouts a day with these guys that are overweight. And so like that's something I've always had like a hard time with, especially because of the core is my being okay with how I look and my fitness. Like right now, the fact I'm recovering from a foot injury, and like when I tried running, like I pulled a muscle in my calf, which is probably from my foot. So I have a doc appointment on Thursday at the VA to see if it's like the bruised bones have healed, if there's a fracture or whatever. It's been killing me. I've been hating now. I've been being like such a lazy piece of shit to not be able to like to run or anything like that. And I guess I could use a bike or something. I don't know. It's just not the same. Like I don't know. I used to run like 5-6 miles, and so like being on a bike for like 20 minutes feels like nothing. So anyways, that's kind of like the other thing I wanted to bring up. And then lastly, getting dropped from OCS, like I mentioned earlier, was a huge catalyst for me because for a while I wanted like police. I was going to be a cop. I was looking at things like FBI, CIA. I wanted to keep the I took a lot of pride at being in enough shape and stable enough to go back to the military if I wanted to. And so I think I hid a lot of stuff or just pretended like it wasn't there, or maybe tried to drink it away. Maybe that's possible. So getting dropped from OCS and then having my OSO, my officer selection officer, and her team, the OST, officer selection team, as soon as they found out that I was disqualified from going back and they couldn't like use me for their numbers anymore, refused to talk to me. And they actually shafted me out of a bunch of medical stuff I was owed. They were supposed to help me within 5 days get like physical therapy set up and some doc visits. And they just wanted to talk to me. So I felt completely abandoned, like left alone. And so I think something in my brain at that dam just got like a giant hole because I was like, well, it doesn't matter anymore. Yeah. Got left alone. And so like a whole bunch of stuff just kind of like came out, and my poor wife's been having to deal with it. And she's actually proud of me for doing this whole thing. She's like, I've been trying to get you to get help for like 6 years, and you're finally doing it. And helping others to maybe do it. Oh, it's a thunderstorm outside now. Yeah, I love that. All right. So that was my military stuff. Go for it, Jonathan, if you would like.
Okay. Yeah. So before the military, like in high school and stuff, I don't know. I was kind of like super. I was the angsty kid. I had the long hair and the leather jacket. Yeah. I was kind of a big loser. I just didn't know it at the time. After high school, I tried going to school for a year and just. I mean, I don't know. I was always smart, but it just wasn't where I wanted to be. I think I was just way too immature for college after high school. So that was when I enlisted, joined the Navy. My boot camp experience was pretty different from yours. It was honestly, it was kind of boring. Navy boot camp, I've heard, and I don't know if this is true or not, but I've heard Navy boot camp is the easiest of the armed forces boot camps. So it was a lot of sitting around and like studying out of a book. And I mean, I didn't get along with everybody, but it was, some guys that talk shit sometimes, and that'd be about it. It wasn't a big deal. Really, my stuff got real bad after boot camp because, like I said in the last episode, I made every stereotypical mistake somebody makes within 6 months of getting out of boot camp. I got married to somebody that, I thought was the best decision of my life. And within just a few months, things got really bad. It turned out that she was just insane. And I mean, it kind of sounds like I'm just trying to be, like exaggerate, but I know she actually showed a lot of symptoms of things like schizophrenia.
So you're not saying like bitches be crazy. You're more like actually this poor gal needs some help.
Yes, she needs very much help. It turned out that she was like actually she had something wrong with her, and it kind of turned into, a lot of fights and stuff at home. And then she just one day she said, "Oh, I'm going to go visit my family for a couple of weeks." So she went to visit her family in Ohio for a couple of weeks. And then I got a Snapchat of all things, of her saying that she wants a divorce. And that was when everything really went downhill for me. I started drinking a lot. I had a lot of personal issues arose out of that, and I was still in training at the time. So I was drinking a lot, my performance at work fell off a cliff. Before that, I was, I wasn't top of the class, but I was doing pretty well. And then all of a sudden, I'm barely passing everything. My uniform looks like crap. I'm showing up late or right on time. So it was kind of the beginning of a big impact on my career. Not to mention just I was dealing with depression. I was dealing with anxiety. I was drinking a lot.
If I had to guess, the Navy was horribly supportive with this whole thing because they're known for having the best rap at being useful.
Yeah. So basically, I was a nuclear trained mechanic when I was in, and basically we were told, they didn't say this outright, but it was heavily implied that, yeah, if you need help for a mental health issue, you're not going to be a nuke anymore. Maybe you'll still be in the Navy, maybe you won't, but yeah, you can kiss this job goodbye. So yeah, I didn't want to go get help. I didn't want to talk to anybody because I didn't want to lose my job. It was a good job that I was really excited about doing. And I did end up seeing the chaplain once because basically I had told a friend of mine that, I was drunk out of my mind, and I told him that I wanted to kill myself, basically. Because a guy in another class had just killed himself, and I was like, yeah, I wish I was like that guy. And so he was trying to get me help through the chain of command, who basically told him, tell us who it is you're talking about so we can kick him out. And so, he was smart enough to immediately say, no, I want to talk to the chaplain. So he was able to get me referred to the chaplain instead of the chain of command. But the chaplain basically told me, well, buck up, don't be sad. Yeah. So over the next couple of years, while I was in training and stuff, it was just more of the same of that, until I ended up just destroying my house on my birthday one year. I got blackout drunk, and when I finally was conscious again, all of my walls had giant holes in them. My furniture was all upside down. I had some kind of a drunken rage moment, and I didn't even remember it. I came to sitting on it was like a lazy boy kind of chair, it was upside down, and I was sitting on the bottom of it on the phone with my dad crying. Don't remember any of that. Don't remember calling my dad. Don't remember doing the furniture. So the next day I went and talked to the DAPA at my command. That's I think it was Drug and Alcohol Prevention something. I don't remember the exact acronym, but it's the Drug and Alcohol Prevention Assistance.
Yeah.
And I talked to him, and he seemed like he actually cared. He was I think he was a senior chief, and he seemed like he actually cared about getting guys better. And that was fantastic. I thought I was going to get the help I need. And then he sent me off to basically Navy rehab down in Jacksonville. I was there for 28 days. Mm-hmm. And that was okay. It was a lot of sitting in a group with people I don't know talking about my feelings, which at the time just seemed stupid. But I mean, looking back, it probably did me more good than I thought it did. But then when I got back, I still have all these same issues. I'm still dealing with, a nasty divorce. I'm still dealing with, wanting to go home and drink all my problems away. Well, that DAPA left. He got transferred, and the new guy that came in had never had a drink in his life.
Oh my God!
Yeah, he had no.
How would they pick at someone to help folks with substance abuse or anything like that who have never even used it? Because are they just oh, you clearly are a Boy Scout person and can get
yeah.
You have to have some platform of understanding, which is why we're doing this episode.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's because he was a chief, and so he talked to his chief buddy so he could have something to put on his eval. I think that's what it was, but I mean, I don't know that. But he just didn't care. I was supposed to be checking with him once a week, and then I was supposed to be going to medical for a group session once a week. And at both places, I was supposed to be checking in. It was supposed to be a regimented thing, but I realized, me with my I'm depressed and all I want to do is drink my problems away brain. I realized that nobody cared. I could not go see the DAPA for a month and he would never notice. I could not go to meetings at medical for a month and they would never notice. And I'm going to take responsibility for that. That was on me. That was me skirting the system. But I think it shows just how easy it is to fall through the cracks. When you're trying to get help.
Yeah, something I think is always important for professionals, at least, is you gotta, at the very least, be down to follow up with folks. You may not actually care a whole lot about the individual, but you at least have to care enough about their generic well-being to at least call them and be like, "Hey, you missed this thing. You doing okay? Let's schedule the next one."
Yeah, exactly. And it just turned into me drinking all the time again and showing up maybe once a month for my check-ins and saying, yeah, I'm fine, and going home, and then, after a little bit of that, I got transferred to the boat. I actually went out to the fleet, and that was kind of a whole new beast. So initially, I had trouble qualifying when I got there. Partially because of all my problems at home. I was still going home and drinking a lot. I was still dealing with a lot of the depression and stuff. And then, also just I was getting all of this information thrown at me that I was told if I didn't learn all this and I didn't qualify fast enough, I'm just a giant piece of shit. I'm not useful to the division, so I'm just a hindrance and everybody hates me. And it just kind of all kept building, and I was starting to get suicidal. I was starting to have a lot of thoughts of suicide. And I was really depressed all the time. I wasn't sleeping. I was drinking if I wasn't at work, I was drunk. That went on for a couple of years. And then, like I said, I was told, if I tried to get help, I was going to lose my job. I wasn't going to be a submariner anymore. I wasn't going to be a nuke anymore. And those are things that I was really proud of. So this all kind of built up and it just kept getting worse and worse and worse up until over the course of a couple of years, I tried to kill myself 3 different times. And I mean, there were other times when, I thought about it, but just didn't try, or for whatever reason, just didn't. So a couple of suicide attempts, and it got to the point where I all I could think about was wanting to be dead. I would be walking to work and I'd be like in a crosswalk and a car would be coming at me. And it would take just a split second too long to start slowing down. And for that split second, I would be happy because I thought, this is it. This is it. I'm not going to have to kill myself, but I'm about to get run over. And, the chain of command on my boat when I got there was horrible. My chief would, at 2 o'clock every afternoon, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, he would tell us, we'd come up and we'd be like, hey, chief, all the work you gave us this morning, we're done. And he'd say, okay, what about these 8 other things that I haven't told you about before? So, we'd be there till 7 or 8 o'clock every night when chief would leave as soon as he gave us all the work. So, and then we had a captain that literally didn't care about us and it would just drive us as hard as he could. And we had my first chief of the boat literally hospitalized a guy, beat a guy into the hospital and still got promoted 3 times. And so he I don't know why, he hated me. So I was struggling with quals back aft. I was struggling with getting qualified submarines. The Cobb, every time he saw me, was yelling at me for no reason. And I mean, I understand that a lot of people have it worse, but that coupled with everything that I had going on at home just really put me in a bad headspace.
Mm-hmm. And it's hard when someone you're working for, because like in the military, they have control of your life.
Yeah, exactly.
Like when I made that story joke about like mopping the walls and the ceilings, it was done by a gal who I was convinced hated me, and the only reason she was able to pull it off to me and a couple of others was because she outranked us. She wasn't even like officially a charge of the unit, so it sucks, especially if someone's got like the rank as well as the billet is, at the very least, in your opinion, against you. Yeah. They can ruin and run your life however they want.
Yeah, exactly. And things kind of slowly started getting better a little bit. I started qualifying some things, so that pressure got relieved a little bit. I got a new chief who actually cared about his guys. So, he kind of helped me, get qualified. He kind of pushed me through a little bit. And, he kind of shielded us from the command trying to just come down and screw us all. And, eventually I got the divorce handled. So kind of piece by piece, things got a little bit better. But it was all just kind of because I toughed it out and I don't want to say got over it, but I just kind of learned to deal with it. I was never offered any help. Guys that went to get help, even if they didn't get kicked out, they were labeled pussies. Oh, you just can't handle it.
Yeah.
And like killing yourself it's a joke on submarines. Not that suicide's necessarily funny, but it's like I would rather kill myself than come to work today. Ha ha ha.
Yeah.
So even if you are kind of trying to talk to people about, hey, I'm having a hard time, it comes off like you're just complaining about work. Everybody complains about work.
That's a common military thing. I think I've heard it's always worse on the Navy for some reason. Maybe it's because of the boats, the tighter spaces. I've always heard that the leadership tends to be worse. Like that COVID, that one captain. You know who I'm talking about? I'm forgetting his name, but the one that was asking for help to the Navy because his ship was getting destroyed by COVID, who got fired, and he was just trying to do the right thing. And the Navy, his superiors, whoever they were, because the captain's pretty high up, right? I know in the Army and Marines, captain's 03, so which is not crazy high for officers, but I think Navy, it's 07, 06?
Captain is an 06, but if you're in charge of a ship, even if you're not actually an 06, a full bird, you're still called captain because you're in charge of the ship.
Gotcha.
So I don't know if he was actually a captain or if he was a commander or something.
Gotcha. Well, a lot of this stuff is why I was trying to go back as an officer. When I got hurt and I had a friend, he was going through recruiter school. And he's like, yeah, I got a spot to be at. And so myself and a couple of others kind of sarcastically were like, yeah, go recruit those guys, lie to them, and ruin 80% of their lives. And he's like, well, just because it didn't work out well for you, you even tried going back as an officer. And all I told him back was, I didn't go back because the Marines are so great.
Yeah.
I tried to go back because I honestly felt like I had a shot at being, I had the ability to be an officer. So I had at least the ability to start small change on a unit and then to hopefully work it up. But that was my ultimate goal. That's why I wanted to do this whole politics thing in this podcast. Because my ultimate goal was to eventually hit at least a high enough of a rank to affect the whole battalion. I was hoping maybe I'd hit colonel. I didn't care a whole lot about promotions. But I wanted to make some impactful change right now. And that's why I went back. And also the money.
Yeah,
I needed money, but
especially that officer money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you're not the only one that has these things. The Navy's full of these stories.
Oh yeah, and when I got to the boat, I don't know if this is true or not, but I got told that I got there at a time when we had the worst morale in the Navy. My command did. So I'm hoping that maybe my story is a little bit, or at least the things I saw are maybe more extreme than other people had. I hope, but I don't know.
I would hope so too, but I've also read stories of sailors throwing themselves into helicopter blades.
Yeah.
While the pilot's in there to get to end it.
Yeah.
What usually angers me the most when I think about this stuff is you've got for example, my warrant officer, I'm not going to use her name, but she's retired. She set up an atmosphere where 8 out of 10 people that got married got divorced. My first 6 months I was at that job, we maybe got 3 or 4 days off. She was terrified of her civilian bosses, quote unquote, because if they called and we weren't all there as a unit, she was worried she'd somehow get in trouble. She had zero backbone, and then when she did occasionally show up with us on work weekend stuff, I remember this one. It was my last Tournament of Roses parade. For those of you that aren't familiar, in California, there's a parade for the tournament, the football tournament game. I'm blanking on the name of it right now. But the parade is the Tournament of Roses parade. We call it the Torp, and at this point. Because our band hosted it because it's based off of the coast. So I was in charge of 20 other saxophone dudes. Most of them outranked me. We were working on a weekend. Almost none of us really wanted to be there. This is my third or fourth time doing it. It's a 2 or 3 a.m. wake up just to start leaving to get to the parade site and stuff. And the day before, she's hanging out. She comes and hangs out with a couple of us corporals. There might have been a sergeant or two there. We're just kind of chilling. And she's like, yeah, I hate when we have to do this. I hate working on a weekend. This is stupid. I wish I could get somebody else to do this. And we're all like, what the fuck, ma'am? You make us work nonstop, mostly weekends and evenings. You have most of the folks getting married, getting divorced. You show and you allow explicit favoritism. You provide an environment where people thought you were okay with, for me personally, harassing me to the point where folks are surprised I didn't kill myself. But you're going to be there and be like, oh man, this one day, this whole goddamn year I have to work is going to like, ruin my whole mood, and then complain about it to people who aren't even close to your command level. You could have gone to a gunny and said that, but no, you had to be around a bunch of salty E4s that were all in like their last year, like fuck this shit, and then she comes over and makes it worse.
Yeah.
And then the master sergeant too, like fuck that guy. He would like take new female lance corporals out to coffee in the middle of the day. He would approve leave when other people just asked for special liberty. Like there's one perfect example. This is why we could do a whole thing on inequality, where this is like a morale thing that also led to depression and stuff. There was this gal and myself. I had been in longer. She's still in. She's a fine lady. I said some weird stuff to her, so we made up for it. But she and I both asked off for the weekend to miss the same performance, gig, work job, whatever, for the same reason. We both had cousins getting married. And I was asking to take leave to just go home to Minnesota to my cousin's wedding and then come back and just miss the one gig. And there were extra people that could do my job. I happened to be the one in charge of the saxophones. And she had the exact same thing, exact same request, only for her, there weren't extras. She was like the minimum requirement or whatever. But for some reason, and she asked for special liberty. But for some reason, I got denied. She got approved, and they let her fly across the country on special liberty, which we all know is illegal. Like she went across, or not illegal, but UCMJ violation. So she went across multiple states on special liberty for her cousin's wedding instead of leave. So like that also pissed us all off. We're like, what the fuck? Like we got people asking, like guys, like I want to take leave. I think she might have asked for leave too. Actually, she might have asked for leave, but they let her do it on special liberty instead, which was just a whole other command culture thing.
When I got to the boat, nobody took leave. Well, I don't know about the forward guys, but nobody in the engine room took leave. We just weren't allowed to take leave when I got there. And after I got the new chief, he was willing to go to bat. And if he signed something that got him in trouble, he was willing to do it. But yeah, the first year and a half, 2 years I was on the boat, it was just a big screw you to everybody.
And people need more folks like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a big problem with upper enlisted. Chiefs. I have a hard time not hating Chiefs because I have seen so many of them screw so many people. And I don't want to just turn this into a rant or anything, but I think that a lot of the problems that we've had and that other people have had could have been either solved or prevented or at least helped if you had more E7s and E8s that actually cared about their guys.
Well, since our next part's going to be about like how it currently affects stuff, that's probably worth me mentioning. I think I'm convinced, like what we were talking about with upper leadership. This is why if I'm reckless with anything, it's usually for the betterment of those I'm in charge of, even the civilian jobs. Like I don't know, when I was running a facility, if someone was like, "Hey, we need to do this thing," I was like, "Do it." Like if someone says you're in trouble, tell them I told you to do it. Like don't even hide it. Like I'll take whatever crap it is that you gotta do. Because I think that's just a really, really, really rare thing.
Yeah.
I think the Navy is probably a little bit worse. I got a fantastic sergeant when I was a fire team leader. She held off her whole sergeant group from coming after me because I sneezed during a ceremony. I tried so hard not to. They like rattled my cover off my head. And so like her whole sergeant corps was going to come after me, and she was like, "Abso-fucking-not." So if she ends up watching this, like I remember that girl, and I hope you get that officer status that you're hoping to do, whether it's warrant officer or TBS. But let me know because like OCS, oof, it's no joke. I only got halfway through it before I got hurt and medically dropped. So for how the pain presents now, I'm going to try this kind of quickly. For me, go through stuff because I know I tend to talk more, so I have to actively try to go faster. Anxiety, I usually get near panic attacks, and the boss says they want to see me. I tear at the skin of my hands a lot. I used to joke because it's like I'd be like, "Oh, at least like if I feel something, it means I'm alive." Like it's kind of like a joke, but I think it's like actually like low key, like a serious thing. Like pulling it, like I didn't care that it hurt, like honestly, or if it did, or if it drew blood, it was just like whatever. I just have to hide it from somebody. And so that's some of the stuff. Also, when you get to this, Jonathan, include like too like how you're seeking for help now with all this stuff.
Yeah.
I will too at the end. I usually spend lots of time thinking over every possible scenario and for any problem I can find. Like it's really bizarre. Like it helps to kind of avoid some things. But also, it oftentimes makes things way worse. Like, oh, this is going to happen. Someone to get fired. I want to get disciplinary. Well, this happens, and that means this other train of thought. And it's just a pain in the ass, and it takes forever. I have a really hard time being still. Like even when you're talking, my foot's shaking. Like I have a little fidget thing, like right here.
Yeah.
It's a little deal my wife got me. I'm like either spinning it around. I don't know. That's some of the still stuff was before I joined, but it definitely got way worse, especially after OCS. I have a hard time with being in a crowd of strangers. It's gone down a little bit with time, but especially like the first year or two after I got out, like my wife still does this. Like I had a really hard time having my back to the two people I don't know. So like either had to be like the wall behind me. Even sometimes a window. If there's like a big glass window, sometimes I'd be like, no, like I need to know what's around me, which is like a really weird thing to have from someone that hasn't been through combat. I'm not even entirely sure where it came from, because surely like 4 months of combat training with a couple of volunteer months I did after that wouldn't have that kind of impact. So I'm not sure exactly where it comes from, but it's something I deal with. But it's gone down a little bit. My wife, when we went to a new restaurant, with a friend of mine whose wife is now, or I guess girlfriend's now, a lieutenant. She was like, hey, like, let's go to this table. And my wife was like, hey, sit in this spot. And I was like, oh, why? She said, well, I know you prefer to like be able to see everything. So like it's gone down with some time, but it's still a thing. I definitely usually like I had at first when I got out, if someone looked Muslim or Islamic, I was like scanning them over and over. I was like convinced, like if something's going to happen, it's going to be that person, which I think that's a military thing. I've gotten over that. It's definitely also like a racism kind of a thing. Like nobody's perfect, but I'm like over that now. But that was like something I struggled with for like a year or two, at least, maybe 3 years. After I got out, was just like being like, it's so people can be who they want to be, and that's fine. Doesn't mean they're going to try and kill my ass or everyone else. I don't think I cared that they might kill me. I honestly didn't give a shit. I was like, well, whatever, I die, because that's like the tough thing with the military. They train you to die, and so you kind of, I think that's what helps with like the suicide, helps, quote unquote, because like you're more like okay with the thought of it, because it's like just something you're kind of trained to be with. And so I think the more common suicidal thing for psychiatrists to deal with is just we don't care. Like whatever. Like if our car goes careening off an edge, as long as someone I care about's fine, I don't really give a shit. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so like, I think that's more where I was going from, because I met Felicia, my wife, like right after I got out, like 2 months after I got out, and then like a couple months later, I was like, I want to marry her. So I was extra paranoid about stuff. With depression, I struggle with feeling good about myself. Like usually, I'm like, oh, what a failure. You're 28. You've only had like hourly jobs, even though you could totally handle way more than that with a bachelor's degree and just your general leadership and project management experience. There's a reason I'm confident. It's because I've been in charge of stuff for the most part since I was like 13. Like I was on county council presidents. I ran Boy Scout troops, black belts in martial arts. Teaches you certain things, and it just kind of, I got leadership roles when I was in the Corps, things like that. So like not getting those after getting out has been really tough. Where people are like, "Oh, you're qualified to work the front desk," or something I've done for years, and like, "Oh, you're just too mean." Like, all right. Uh, I've also tend to go through a lot of mood swings, like lots of like I might start the morning off either really bummed or just fine, and then be the opposite within a couple of hours, or like over the course of a day, like for no reason. I honestly can't even pin out like Felicia, like what's wrong, or like why are you feeling so great? And I honestly have no clue at all. I don't know if it's like
if my wife listens to this, she's not going to be entirely convinced that it wasn't me talking right there.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that work's tough. When you're convinced everyone's out to get you. I have a really hard time with like work relationships or just interpersonal relationships. So that just makes working hard. Like if I could, that's part of why I think I wanted to start my gaming YouTube channel, which I'm not going to plug as far as like the name and stuff goes, because that's not the point of this whole thing.
Yeah.
But like I'd much rather work for myself than have to deal with all the other stuff because I can't control other people, and that drives me nuts. Suicidal more often exhibits in whether I care or not. I mean, obviously, there's days where I'm like, oh my gosh, it takes every effort just to not whip my car off the side of the road because I'm in Colorado. There's lots of steep drop offs and stuff.
Yeah.
Or like like lots of traffic and whatever. And I already mentioned like the military prepares you to like be okay with dying, and so that's probably more of it. But there was a time about a month ago where I got real close. I was like envisioning, I was like starting to make plans, and I was like, all right, like my wife was like, you gotta hide everything. You need to, like my AR, my handgun, shotgun, you gotta hide it all somewhere, and at the very least, making sure it's locked where I can't get to it without you knowing about it because I have to take your keys or something. That's probably the closest I've been since I was in. Of course, there's body dysmorphia, which is a pain in the ass because you need to eat. I like food. But and since I can't work out, it's just an extra. I think it's more of the more minor things, but I think this is probably more resonant for Marine folks, probably, if I had to guess, or just anyone that really felt like their fitness and appearance really hinged on their success while they were in. Because like it didn't matter to me before, but like now, if I see someone that's fat, all I see is an obese person. That's it. I'm like, you lazy piece of shit. Like letting yourself, you clearly can't make good life decisions because you look like that, which is maybe scientifically somewhat true, but it's not a healthy way to look at people, especially if you got coworkers that are that way, which adds to the extra coworker thing. Because then half the time I'm biting my tongue about wanting to tell them how to shape their lives up. Like at the high school I'm working at, they've been doing a fitness module for the special needs students, like how to work out, and the teacher that runs it in my head is obese. Medically, she probably is. And so like I have a really hard time sitting there when she's like trying to tell like her students like how to work out and they need to be active and stuff. I'm like, what the fuck you think you're talking about? You clearly can't do it yourself. Why like tell like have somebody else, like one of your paras or somebody that clear is at least in decent shape or at least thin-ish to do it. Because you even know half the stuff you're talking about as far as like exercises and how to use the gear. So like take advantage of your people and not just be like this fat person telling other fat kids how to not be fat. I don't know. That was my main beef with GNC when I was running a fitness store like that, and I used it really well. I was like, GNC, they're all fat. They don't work out. They don't know what they're doing. My guys and I, we use our stuff. We know what we're doing. Like, come to me. And I think that was probably a part of the dysmorphia stuff. Also, like most Marines, alcohol abuse. I feel like for me in general, it helps me to not have those bad thoughts for some reason. Like, of course, there's days where it does the opposite and it makes things worse. But for some reason, most of the time, to me, it feels like it helps me just forget and not care. And so to kind of end my little spiel, the stuff I've been doing to get help. So I've started seeing a psychologist and I see a therapist tomorrow morning, actually, for the first time. So they sent me some meds. I filed disability claims. I have an advocacy group, which we could do more on that in a different episode. That helps me out with all this stuff, and like they do it for free, which is great. And so I'm just trying to get help and trying to be more cool with like, hey, I've got issues. I'm just careful who I tell them to, which is kind of weird putting this on the internet where like anyone can watch it. But like, there's one coworker I can think of that's aware of this stuff. The rest of them, like, otherwise it's just my wife. I didn't tell my parents. Part of that's because like upgrade bringing and things, and like with like a very Christian household, and getting bullied from like the church itself that I was in by like the pastor's kid and his group of friends. But I ended up telling them when they came out to visit like a month or two ago about more of this stuff, and so they're more in the know now. And so I try to have more folks I can at least. Like, I might not give my parents like all the details because I want them to know. Like, I feel like I'm the failure of the family. Like, my younger brother has a job and a baby. Like he makes like more money than my wife and I do combined. My youngest brother, he's got a master's degree in computer science, working for some defense contract company, making like 80 to 100 grand right out of college, which is way more than I make by myself, or and about close somewhere between 2 to 3 times my wife and I make combined. So like there's some of those struggles too, but I don't necessarily attribute them specifically to the military. It's kind of like a side effect. Like all the stuff that happened where supposedly being a veteran gets you jobs, but it didn't. And so like I don't necessarily blame the Corps exactly for like feeling like I'm the loser of the family or whatever, but it's at least a contributing factor. So I get help. I talk with therapists. I have like a mental health journal, especially if I'm bored at work. I'll just like type into it like how I'm feeling. Usually I do it if it's like a bad day as opposed to like an okay or a good one. Just so that way whenever I talk to the therapist, I can be like, oh, like here's some stuff I was struggling with. And like some feelings I was having or whatever. Just because I think it's really hard for me at least to remember those or be okay to say them off the top of my head. It's like as soon as the video meeting goes live, I forget all the issues I had. And I'm like, oh, I'm fine. Hoorah. and that's not good. So I'm trying to do more of a journal thing and be more prepped. So like I got some meds that help a lot. One of them helps with night terrors because that's been a thing. Like most nights before I started those meds, I would like wake up with like out of breath, super sweaty, like my heart pounding, stuff like that. Like I would see myself or others die constantly in my sleep. And I don't know if that's necessarily like a Marine thing, but it didn't happen before the Marine, so I don't know. And so that's what I've been doing to try and get help is to use the VA. And use the medications and stuff they'll give me for substance abuse. They're trying to help me find like a prevention like program rehab kind of a thing. But currently the only ones they have are for like 15 to 20 hours a week during the day.
Oh yeah, that sucks.
So I'm gonna meet with a therapist kind of a person for like 30 minutes like once a week in her off hours or something. So that's pretty nice of them. But for formal programming, she was like, yeah, it's like 27 hours a week. And I was like, hang on. I'm not retired. She's like, yeah, like Monday, Tuesday, Thursday from 9 a.m. to noon. I was like, who can make this? Like, this gotta be like a class size of one. And it's like a retired guy or someone that's unfortunately just can't get a job, which I feel bad for him. That's by no means an insult. It's just the fact. Like,
Yeah.
All right. So tell us about you.
Okay. So some of the ways kind of that this stuff kind of comes out now. And I kind of like you. I don't know if this is because of the Navy or if the Navy took something and just kind of like made it worse or something. But firstly, I have a really hard time opening up. I have a really hard time talking about my feelings or like what's in my head. So I mean that's caused some pretty big communication barriers between me and my wife. She's very much about having everything out in the open and let's sit down, let's talk about this. And I just,
that was mine.
Yeah, I just can't do it. Like I want to, I know that that's what she needs. And I want to be able to have a good communication in our relationship, but I just cannot talk about like my emotions.
Well, we're supposed to be like these hardened individuals, so like we're kind of drilled in. You don't tell people, especially ones you feel like you're responsible for.
Exactly. Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure that I was a little bit like that before the Navy, but then, like on the boat, if you're having a hard time, you don't tell anybody. Because if you tell somebody you're having a hard time, they are going to poke every button they can.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably the biggest way that all this comes out now is, it's impossible for me to be open about, what I'm struggling with. So I have a couple of physical issues. I almost lost a couple of fingers on my right hand in an accident, and I have a bad knee. And basically, the Navy just told me, too bad. None of it ever got my medical record. With the knee, I was basically accused of trying to get out of PT. Oh, you just don't want to run. Here, take these ibuprofen and come back if it still hurts.
Did you still try to file? Because I had a couple that were kind of like that, and I managed to get disability for them.
Yeah, I don't think I'd get anything for the knee because I think it's kind of off and on. I don't think I'd be able to actually prove anything. The fingers are starting to get like arthritic and stuff, and if it gets any worse, I'm going to try to file. So I'm going to see what happens there. Because originally when it happened, the doc on board told me when we pull into port, as soon as the brow drops, I'm going to take you to get X-rays. And then by the time we pulled into port, he basically said, you're fine, get over it. But I mean, he did that to everybody. He undertreated everybody on board. So I'll have to see, if it gets any worse, then I'm going to have to see if I can get any disability for it.
Yeah, let me know. I can probably point you to a group that can help you out.
Okay, excellent. That'd be great. I don't think this is necessarily Navy related, but the really fucked up marriage I was in. I mean, that kind of jaded me on.
I think that's military related. Barracks atmospheres and hinges on being married. There's a reason contract marriages exist. It's that way people get married just for the length of time they're in the barracks or they're in. So I would say it's still Navy related. I have a guy, he's a pastor now. He gets 100% disability because he got divorced to his wife while he was under the leadership of that chief warrant officer I was ranting about earlier. So I would call it Navy related.
Yeah, and that, I mean, I'm not going to say that having an ex-wife makes it impossible for me to have a good relationship with my wife, but there were definitely some roadblocks put up, with again trying to be open and feeling like I could be vulnerable. And the last time I did it, it really screwed me. And then kind of something else. So on the boat, you have to trust everybody or trust most people because everybody has to do their job or we're all screwed. So I don't necessarily have a problem trusting coworkers, but something that it did kind of breed in me is if somebody sucks, I hate that person. If somebody is not up to standard, because on the boat, if somebody wasn't up to standard, they were screwing over the entire crew in one way or another. So we were basically trained to just think that person is the worst human being on the planet and you should wish them dead. And that's kind of been hard to break. There's a guy at work that, really isn't, he's not bad. He gets his job done, but he complains about having to do his job and he, kind of just does the bare minimum. And I have a hard time not just absolutely hating that guy for no reason other than that's just what I did for 6 years. I hated the guy that only did the bare minimum.
Well, and if you get hurt too, they call you broke. At least that's what my experience was. And so it wasn't like you're injured. It was just you're broke, which while I was in seemed kind of whatever, normal. And then when I got out, if I got hurt, I call myself broke. I'm like, I'm broke. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, no, you're just hurt. Like, you're not broke. You're still like a functioning human being. It's like, no, because it affects the job. Like, I'm clearly like a broken toy. Like, I'm broke. I'm like, that's not right. That's not how it works. So that's the thing too, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Even when my hand was bad, luckily everybody kind of didn't give me too much shit for it. But yeah, I mean, I had guys that I needed help turning valves and stuff, and even they stuck me back on watch, even though I couldn't operate my watch station. So I'd be having to call guys over for help, and they thought it was ridiculous that I needed help to turn this valve, and I'm like, dude, I can't use one of my hands. What am I supposed to do? Yeah, and then I kind of. Going in and coming out, I mean, I came out a different person. Everybody comes out a different person. You hear about the work ethic and I was taught responsibility, that kind of thing. But I mean, I came out really with a different personality, I think. I came out more jaded and more callous, I guess, a little bit. The boat really did kind of harden me. And in some ways, I think that's probably a good thing. I can take a joke a little bit better. But in some ways, it kind of made me a little bit more of a cold person. And I mean, that sucks. I would like to be less of a jackass, less of a jerk, and the boat kind of bolstered that up a little bit. As for trying to get help, I talked a little bit last episode about, I tried to go to the VA for my mental health issues and basically just got told to kick rocks. So, that sucked, reaching out for the help and then just not getting it. Luckily I had, now I do have a civilian job. The health insurance just kicked in, so I can go find somebody. I've been looking for somebody in the civilian sector so that I can get. I know I'm going to get help there because they're going to be taking my money. They're not going to turn me away if I'm going to pay them. But even just talking to people, I don't open up much. I have a hard time with that, like I said. But when I do actually talk to my wife about stuff that I've gone through, it helps. When I don't have a lot of friends, kind of like you, where one or two people is about all I talk to. But, talking with them when stuff gets tough really helps, Yeah. And then the drinking, once I kind of got everything else sorted out, the drinking kind of took care of itself a little bit. I think it was mostly, it wasn't so much the cause as it was the symptom. You know, once I got everything in check, that kind of just went. I don't want to say went away, but I was able to control myself with that much better. So I got lucky there.
Well, for me, I'm not sure it's like necessarily like out of control. Like I haven't hit a point yet where it's like don't show up to work or get there late because of it, or I'm there with some crazy hangover. It's just more like harder to relax without it, kind of thing.
Yeah. See, I hit that point while I was in the Navy. Where I was, I was not functioning because of the drinking. But then, once everything else fell into place,
yeah,
I wasn't that way anymore. And I think part of that too was culture. It wasn't uncommon for a guy to, there was one guy that he got engaged and he threw his engagement party on like a Monday night. So I went to the engagement party and drank until I physically could not drink anymore, and then I went to work the next day. Because everybody was at his party and we all went to work the next day.
Yeah.
And that's in the real world that's frowned upon a little bit.
Yeah. Something while you were talking that kind of reminded me is I think some veteran kinds of stuff that perhaps leads to stereotypes and things. I think when you get out, you either get more cemented in your ways or things change. So like for me, I like, for example, I voted for Trump the first go around, which regardless of your politics or whatever, my feeling ended up being for the second go around, I was like, I can't believe I did that. I think that had a lot to do with my life afterwards, because things like if you get out and you get good jobs, you are moderately succeeding, and you're kind of going where you want to be in life, then like that kind of seems like more of the way to go, right? Because like kind of Trump kind of more or less personified that. And honestly, that's like the first go round where I thought I was going, and so like that's where I had voted. I'm not trying to get like super political, but like if you get out, like the bootstraps thing, if you do really well, you have a hard time with folks that are struggling, and maybe like the minimum wage thing for you for an individual might be a big hang up. And there might be like a veteran that got out and they succeeded, and for them, they're like, well, I pulled myself up by my bootstraps, and I did really well after I got out of the military. You should just join the military. And then you got other folks that are kind of like me, because I started off that way for sure, that saw like I did everything, Eagle Scout, all kinds of extracurricular activities. I had a really high GPA, at least for criminology, of 3.64. I graduated with honors out of Iowa State University. Did like volunteer stuff. I played like on a rugby team for a year at Iowa State. I did all kinds of things. And getting a job that is considered by the VA at least gainful employment has been damn near impossible. And so like that just kind of changes your perspective some, because you experience different things, and so like I kind of swing more of the other way. Well, like sometimes people just like need help, and not everyone's experiences are valid and all that stuff. I think it's kind of like an indirect side effect of the military, is it seems like it maybe entrenches you one way or the other, and so if it goes like the more of the typical like American illegal immigrants, kind of stuff, then you probably did pretty well right after getting out. From my experience, maybe not. Like like I know that's a little bit generalized, but maybe not. And then I think I see veterans that are more on the help each other out, like raise minimum wages, more like regulation and taxes and stuff, especially for like corporations and things, tend to be ones that struggled from my experience when they get out. And I think that's just kind of like an indirect effect of being in. I'm not trying to be like one way is better than the other, or anything like that. It just kind of occurred to me when you're talking about like afterwards and getting cemented in, that's kind of like an indirect kind of a thing that could have at least a societal impact more than an individual one.
That's interesting. I hadn't really thought about that, but just looking at the people that I knew after that, I think that does seem to kind of be true. But I couldn't tell without looking into it a little bit more.
We'd have to run an actual study. I just know from people I know that got out. So one of them, he's my best man. His dad like owns like a tree arbor kind of a landscaping business in California, so he's more or less taking over it. And he's very more Republican, which is surprising because he gets stopped in airports all the time because he looks like he's Muslim. He's not. He's Greek, but like he calls himself darker Greek. And so like he gets stopped a lot. but he was, at least for a while, very much a Trump supporter. I think he still is. We had some conversations a while about my feelings with inspiring violence and January 6th and all that stuff. And then we've got other, like his brother, for example, got out, really struggled to get a job, struggled a lot with like mental health and even wanting to work, and is very much like pro Bernie Sanders and stuff. And so like, and there's a couple others that would fit into like those categories that I know. And so it just kind of sort of seems to be a trend to me. It just kind of occurred to me while you were talking. So this may have gone just a little too I don't know. Sometimes shows need to be kind of political or whatever. And ultimately, everyone's a person, and no one. I don't think either Jonathan or I are going to be like, "You're an idiot" if someone's like completely disagrees with the kinds of stuff we go with. I usually just go with, as long as whatever it is you're doing isn't harming somebody else, then you do you.
Yeah, absolutely.
If it's harming yourself or somebody else, then like everyone needs people to tell you, "Hey man," or "Hey gal, you gotta shape up a little bit," like you're hurting somebody.
Yeah,
that's usually what I go with.
Yeah.
All right. Is there anything you wanted to add before I do the exit?
No, I think I'm good. We already went about an hour over time, so.
All right. So hopefully, I know this is a longer one. I figured when we're trying to share our own struggles and stuff, it'll be longer. We do hope to at some point do like live shows and whatever, and those will probably run a similar-ish amount of time as this, just because we want to take questions like as they're coming in and let the individuals converse and speak how like their minds and stuff. So we appreciate you guys for sticking this one out. Hopefully, it was insightful. And a little bit like we got a couple of white bread dudes who have no idea what they're talking about. They have no hardships at all or anything. It might not be the worst hardships, but we at least maybe hopefully set up a platform for mutual understanding. I think was the goal of this, because we're like, we gotta set the example. If you're a Marine like me, that's one of the leadership principles is set the example. So we needed to set it for you guys that it's okay to say you got stuff you're working on and that you're getting help for it. Whether you want to tell us or not is up to you. So if you do, though, you can comment down below, email us at CounterAction22, that kind of thing. Make sure you guys all subscribe, follow, download these podcasts, share them with friends. If you've got a crazy uncle or someone that's like the military is, I don't know, X, Y, or Z, this might be a channel they might appreciate because they might either concur or have some interesting engagements with us. You never know. All right. Don't forget to email us at counteraction22@gmail.com. Again, that's counteraction22@gmail.com. That's the number 22. And you can also message us on Twitter at counteraction15. If you search for us, that's the handle. Otherwise, it's counteraction. I haven't figured out how to change it to CounterAction22, but I will at some point. I figured it out once, and I'll figure it out again. I've just been really busy, so I haven't done that yet. So anyways, thank you guys all for joining us. Thanks, Jonathan, for being down to share. I know this is a little self-exposing for ourselves to some degree, which is why I was having some of this. So, all right, guys, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to be a part of the counteraction and be a part of the solution for all of the veteran issues and challenges that we're trying to face, as well as the positive things that we need to promote in our own lives. Feel free to promote your own channels down below if you're a veteran, because who are we to tell you guys to keep it to yourselves? See y'all in the next episode.